Lancaster Woodturners Weekly Coffee Hour number 160 for July 13th, 2023. Kai's going to give us a slideshow from their recent symposium on turning a wooden lampshade.
Okay. Can you see the PowerPoint?
We got it.
Yeah, great. So some photos we took of the lampshade turner when we had that little symposium, and had one day of an excursion where we visited him. So that just describes the process, and then I have got a little bit of film as well.
Okay.
So lampshade turning, or for Jim, funnel turning. I hope Jim is watching as well.
He's not at the moment, but he'll get the video.
Okay, great. So the wood used was poplar, and here you can see the poplar section between centers. The lathe is a Stratos XL lathe, where you can move the headstock. So later on you will see that that makes it easier hollowing out the workpiece. So some shavings he produced, and he liked to produce, or likes to produce, really big shavings.
What kind of tool is he using there?
It's a gouge.
Okay. I can I see now, yeah.
With a long grind here used on its side to peel off or to shape the outside with a peeling cut. Right. So let's go on. That's the outside shape finished, and he put on a tenon. Here you can see the tenon that is refined for his chuck, and then he moved the spindle stock a little bit, so he could kind of hollow out. No, it's not. Yeah, it's not moved at that stage. It's still the old position. That's just drilling out the center of the lock section, and he drilled all the way through, even where the chuck is. So all the way through this workpiece got a hole. And
so this guy's making funnels on purpose.
Yes, yes. To make lampshades.
Yeah.
Okay. So and now the headstock has been moved a little bit towards the end of the lathe. The tailstock is removed, and
so this is so he can stand at the end of the lathe.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
So that makes hollowing easier.
Yeah.
And he uses a hook tool that is a bit special, because you can see the hook is bent downwards and it's cutting on this side. Normally, the hook tools we use in Germany are bent in the other direction. And he gets these from the Far East, I think Korea, or so it's a special hook tool he's using. And he says he can produce really big shavings using this one.
I have a hook tool from Michael Hosolic, and it curved that way. And I had a lot of trouble learning how to use it. But when you learn to use it, that thing will really cut nice.
Yeah, it did. When we watched that, I have a bit of video later on, then you can see it. So, and well, a gouge is used to refine the surface. Also, there were some knots from branches in the wood, and that made it more difficult to use the hook tool. So a gouge works better with the knots to get a nice surface. Hook tools tend to jump a little bit when they go from softwood into hardwood and back. So here you can see a selection of the hooks. That's the kind of sharpening I know. And here the hook is bent in the other direction, and the cutting edge is here, or the bevel is on this side. So that's used with the hook pointing down. And here you can see the finished lampshade.
So it's what, about 1/8 of an inch thick, a 16th thick?
About a 16th, maybe, very, very thin, at least for most of the part. It's a bit thicker at the end where it is hanged later on to hold the light bulb fixing. Okay, here you can see that that's a bit thicker here, but the rest is really thin. And Max Lucy has got a website, or the guy who turned the lampshades is Max, and Lucy is his partner. She does the finishing and design and stuff like that. So they call themselves Max Lucy together. And he's got a website, maxlucy.de. So there you can see lots of his more pictures or photos of his work and what he does. So that might be interesting to have a look at. Okay, and now there is just 1.5 minutes of film that I would like to show you. Let's see whether I can find that. That should be the right one. Okay.
Stu, come on. You gotta block Stu. He always makes those clearing sounds.
Can they hear us?
So here you can see the roughing out at a lower speed. And here it's already round, so he increased the speed a little bit. Still roughing out.
So what does he do with all the chips this is going to create? I mean, there must be hundreds of pounds of chips.
I think he gives them to farmers for chicken and pigs and so on. They put them into the stables. As it is wet wood, he said, he can't store them all and dry them all for heating purposes. So here one of us, or one of the symposium participants, got the chance to try out the hook, and you can see how it works.
Wow. I have never seen
now,
it used like that.
That's the section where the knots are in the wood. So that was harder work. Yeah, and that's it.
Oh, questions for Kai about this? Amazing.
Kai,
Yeah.
I have a question about the Stratos lathe. Is it totally made in Europe, or is it imported components, or any idea? You know?
No, it's components imported from the Far East, as far as I know.
Yeah.
So it's not made in Germany. No.
No. None of the electronics or anything.
Maybe part of it, but most of it is important from the Far East. Yeah.
Kai,
Otherwise, lathes of that size and which are as heavy as this one are really expensive in Germany. So that is not the case with this lathe. It's not that expensive.
One Way has a subsidiary in Germany now for a few years.
Yeah. Yeah, I know.
They ship a lot of lathes to Europe.
Yeah.
Kai,
Yes.
Kai, I just wanted to put this into John and you and the group. Is there somebody that could put together a presentation on using hook tools and the various forms of it? Because I've seen them and I see a brief picture, but that really doesn't show me a lot as far as the use of the hook tool is concerned. And I'd like to learn more about it.
I'd like to actually see a demo at the club sometime. If Ron has one that he thinks he knows how to use, that would be great.
I'll have to do a little practice, but I can do that, yeah.
Yeah.
It's not that difficult to use. It's kind of like the hunter tool. You find the sweet spot, and I have a huge handle on mine. The whole tool is about 3 feet long, and you got to work from the end of the lathe. I even did inside an urn with mine just for the fun of it last year. Not all of it, but I did some of the hollowing just to try it in it, because normally you don't use it in a position that you can't see it.
Well,
Cool.
yeah, I'd like to see that. And I've seen people with hooking both directions. I've seen them cut on opposite sides, and now both sides of the lathe turning with it. So you're either cutting up or cutting down. So it looks like it's quite versatile. So that's what I'd like to see demonstrated, John. Yeah. Anyway, thanks.
Yeah. Doug, that might depend a bit on the kind of hook tool you use. There are some hook tools that you can use in both kind of directions of the lathe. And there are other hook tools that can be only used in one direction when the workpiece turns towards you. But there are some hook tools that do both. You can use them also when the lathe is running in reverse. And that sometimes makes it easier to get to the place or to see what you're doing while cutting.
Yeah, that's the type of thing that I'd like to see somebody include in their demonstration.
It would be good if it had, as a comparison, a ring tool.
Yeah.
In the AAW, the fellow from Sweden used the Sorby ring tool.
I have one of those, the ring tool, and it's really very, very nice little tool to use, and you can use it on both sides. And that's one of the other reasons I like to see the comparison. So
It sounds like maybe you need to become expert and give us the demo that you'd like to see.
all right, if you guys would recommend a couple of hook tools, I'll buy them and try them.
Well, as I understand it, the function of the ring tool and a hook tool are very similar. But I don't know anything about a ring tool. I've never used one.
Well,
yeah, I think they're very similar. Yeah.
That's one of the reasons I want to find out, because it's all intriguing about how the blade is used and how it's introduced. So, yeah, I guess I'll take you up in your challenge, John.
Okay, good. Any other questions for Kai, or should we move along?
I've just one little remark to make. Last week we discussed carbide inserts for hollowing tools, and I put a little information into the chat that you can download if you like. So that gives you the information about the code that is used for the carbide inserts and how to read it, so you know what you get when you order a carbide insert. And they come in different sizes and different thickness. So the smaller ones are thinner than the bigger ones. So the code is a little bit different for the smaller tools. Not only the number that gives the diameter, but also the letter that is used for the thickness is different. But you can see that, and there's also a link to a website that explains how to read the code. And I put 2 examples onto my sheet.
And that's in the chat. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kai.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah. Barry has a new threading rig that I've been dying to see. Barry, you want to show us that?
Okay, let me try my screen share here. I've made 2 earlier threading jigs, and they both suffered from the fact that you're actually pushing a threaded rod or turning a threaded rod through the pillow block. And if you used metal on metal, like having a nut there that the shaft rode in, you had to put, well, at least my solution was to pack it with a lot of Teflon tape so it wouldn't have chatter. But it resulted in having a considerable amount of runout, like a 1/16 of an inch maybe of runout. So I tried a different one, and they both suffered the same problem. And so I talked to, actually emailed Mike Peace back on Saturday, and because I had heard Ron talking about Mike Peace's threading jig. And I realized I had one of those on the left-hand side of the picture. You'll see that Penn State Industries makes this. It's for converting the 5/8 output on a shopsmith to a 1-inch 8 thread per inch thread pattern, like a mini lathe or something. Anyhow, I had bought one for a different purpose a couple years ago, and I still had it. So just basing that 5/8 bore diameter throughout the system. First, I discovered that, threaded rod, or shaft, if you buy just like Home Depot kind of shaft, it varies by as much as about 7/1000 of an inch on the diameter, and it is not truly straight. And so there's a company, Thompson, that makes a lot of linear motion products. And the here in America, at least, the company Granger, they're online. You can buy it from them online. They sell hardened ground. I forget the composition of the shaft, but it's a Rockwell 62 hardened ground, and it's guaranteed as not bigger than 0.625, not smaller than 0.624. The best I can put a micrometer on this, it is right on 0.625. And so it fits into the threaded end on the left, like so snugly that if you push it on and let it go, it'll pop back off. It has to have something to relieve itself. And so that takes care of that end. And then inside the wooden block, the mahogany block in this case, I bored through with a 1 3/8 bore. And that happens to be the outside diameter of a standard 5/8 ID bearing, ball bearing. And so the shaft continues on through there. And that's a 6-inch shaft, by the way. Granger gets about $14 for it. If there's more than one person going to make it, it gets cheaper when you buy it like in a 1 foot length, or you could also buy drill rod, which is cheaper, but you have to buy in a 3 foot length. And it has similarly tight tolerances and hardness. And fortuitously for my design here, the copper sleeve you see in the middle, standard 1/2 inch copper piping for household actually has an outside diameter of like 0.627, just slightly over 5/8 of an inch. And so a coupling for that copper has an ID that clears that, and it permits that copper sleeve to slide freely over the ground shaft and onto, now in my case, what you're seeing here is a 3/4 inch, 10 thread per inch screw. And so I do have a small metal lathe, and I turned off the threads and turned it on down for about a 1/2 inch to 5/8 of an inch so I could make the coupling.
Is
And
that just a press fit, or is that glued or welded, soldered or something?
yeah, I don't know how well you can solder. You probably have to use silver solder or something to join it to the hardened shaft. This was actually just 5-minute epoxy. I put some grind marks on the shaft so it would bite. It does well. The critical thing is aligning, exactly aligning the threaded rod portion and the ground shaft portion. I made a jig where I just drilled through a block of wood straight through at 5/8 of an inch, and then counterbored the one end at 3/4 of an inch, and just cut that block in half so I could feed the rod in from one end and the threaded shaft in from the other, and they matched perfectly, well, pretty perfectly aligned. then just slid the copper sleeve over the two. I consider this a non-machining, non-metal machining required jig, because if you step down from 3/4 inch thread, which I happen to have around the house, to a 5/8 thread, there is no machining at all. You do go from 10 to 11 thread per inch, but the 5/8 threaded shaft will slide directly into the copper, and you can just bond the copper onto the two components directly, and then just the drive, the advancement is controlled by the appropriate nut in the block of birch plywood you see at the right end. You can't really see it too well there. You know, here you see the mahogany block with the 5/8 bearing in on the one end. And then finally, here is the full up jig. The part you were seeing is, I'll call it the body. And then it slides down onto a base, which in turn mounts to a platform tool rest. It has some screws to tighten it on there so it has no motion. The in and out, you know, the Y travel on this device is accomplished through the, you can kind of see here, I put some aluminum screwed and bonded to the pieces, and you advance or retard that knob, or there's one you really can't see it, but on the opposite side, and you can do fine adjustment with the big knobs up on top turned down pretty tight so it has no free play. And you can, with those small knobs, run it in until it makes contact with the cutter, and then advance it the appropriate amount to get your the root of your thread. In this case, you'd be advancing at about 45 thousandths of an inch to get to the root of the 3/4 tin thread.
I'm not seeing how you get that thing parallel to the lathe ways, though. What makes that happen?
Actually, it doesn't have to be parallel. It can be off by as much as 5 degrees, and it wouldn't matter because the nature of the cutter, it's only cutting at one point. You know, it's not like you're going into a tap or into a die where you have to have concentricity. There's a single, you know, there's 6 teeth on the cutter, and I run the cutter at my lathe tops out at 3200, and I run it at 3200, and it produces a very fine cut. But it all it will matter if it's not squared up is that your tooth, your thread, resulting thread, instead of being a 60-degree thread with 30 degrees on either side, it would be a 60-degree thread that might have 58 or 28 degrees on one side and 32 degrees on the other side. It's just a non-symmetrical thread, but it.
The impact of that is the possibility of the lid and the body not. The threads will work, but you may not have an even fit all the way around. You may have a gap on one side.
Yeah, well, my line of thought is if it is visibly square, and by that I mean if I look down on the lathe bed from above, if I can see that it's that when I have the chuck and the box on there, if I can see this assumes a cylindrical kind of box, but if I look down over the cylindrical edge and I see the bedway visually parallel, that's as close as you can probably work in wood. And you're not going to.
It's close enough, I think, to get good effective threads, because that's a design that chefware kits uses mounted in the banjo. One technique that someone discovered to square it up, if you really want to get it square, is you put a vertical piece of board between the face of the spindle and the face of the chuck adapter, and that will get the two parallel with each other. And then you make sure you don't spin the tool in the tool post or in the banjo, if that makes sense. So there are ways to get it perfectly square with a technique.
Yeah, I really can't do the first method you mentioned there, Mike. On my lathe is a jet, and the face below the spindle on the headstock is not flat; it's curved.
No, you don't get it flat with against the lathe. You get it flat against the face of the spindle. You square it up with a board in between the two spindles.
Yeah, that'd work.
I will stand by my honest belief that if you are visually squared, it doesn't really matter for either inside or outside turning. It doesn't produce run out. It doesn't produce taper. All it produces that is abnormal is that instead of the thread being 30 degrees with respect to the center line, it's off by 1 or 2 degrees. And we are not working with aerospace results here. It's wood.
Well, also, the height adjustment there is the tool post adjustment. So to get the height right, you have to fiddle that as well. Or do you have a block or an index block of some kind?
Yeah, I have to add a collar to it. I don't have a 1-inch collar laying around, or would have done that in time here. But what I do on this is, here you see the tailstock has been dropped down and behind the lathe, but with the tailstock still up, the outboard end on the wooden knob you see on the right has a concentric hole drilled into a piece of steel, and you can run that onto your center. I mean, you can raise and lower the platform jig until you are at the cutting height. And again, being too high or too low by even a 1/16 of an inch, it would make a difference if you were cutting something that was, say, a 1-inch diameter or 2-inch diameter. But you really can't do anything less than about 2-inch diameter because of the diameter of the cutting tool. Once you get down below a certain diameter, the tool is not advancing. Well, it's advancing perpendicular. It's not following the slope, and so you have basically 6 teeth on a cutter that are all engaging, and it's kind of hard to cut anything under about twice the diameter of the cutter. Well, the cutter's about 7/8 of an inch outside diameter.
Mike Peace and I both tried to make jig on the same principle as this. I don't know how his came out. I know that mine never worked worth a damn. It was always off, out of alignment somewhere or sloppy somewhere. So I'm looking for where you've gotten rid of all that. I guess I don't know where the slop came from. I always thought it was misalignment between the shaft holding the chuck and the latheways, and I never could get that right. But you're telling me that doesn't much matter.
But I think part of it, as Barry mentioned, is if you made it from a crude coarse threaded rod from Home Depot, especially one that might be zinc coated, the tolerance between that rod in the manufacturing process and the nuts, they are pretty crude.
I figured out
you are
that.
correct.
The critical
You're very
difference
correct.
here.
I know when Bonnie Klein designed her threading jig, she spent a lot of time on finding a way to make it so that it always lined up, that those two, the spindle and this drive, were exactly parallel to each other. And that's why her jig did so well. But she doesn't sell it anymore. I'll try to see if somebody has information about it. But her threading jig was the best at doing that.
I was kind of curious, Barry, why you decided to mount it on the banjo as opposed to making a sled where it fit between the bedways and slid up and down. which would make it easier to register it.
I don't think that's true, because if I'm turning, say, a 2.5-inch diameter box and it's mounted to the bed, I have to have a lot of, cross-action slide capacity to move it in that small. And if I'm turning, say, a 5-inch diameter at the outside box, I'm retreating it quite a bit. With the banjo, I can move it very close to what to where it's almost contacting, and then I lock it down. And I guess what I would want to hear is, why not use the banjo? There is no downside to using the banjo. Instead of screwing
So
around.
Actually, there is a downside in that it can rotate around that shaft, which is the vertical shaft. And what Mike was advocating is if you have it fitting within the ways and sliding back and forth along the ways, then it does stay aligned so that shaft is parallel with the spindle shaft, and you don't have to do any alignment there.
I hear you guys talking a lot about alignment, how you have to get this not really accurate. And I'm thinking about the thread in the wood is not going to stay that way because of wood expanding and traction. And I haven't heard anybody talk too much to Mike's comment about the tightness of the lid versus the body. So when the real result isn't that what you're aiming for? Is the real result is how nice the connection is between the lid and the base of a piece?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is the key, because threads don't even have to look perfect to work, and they need to be loose. Just kind of like when you put your chuck or a faceplate on a spindle, you wiggle it a little bit, and there's a lot of slop until it registers against the spindle, and that essentially that's what you're duplicating with wooden threads. You need to have the key is a certain amount of slop where it'll accommodate some movement of the wood seasonal changes, and it goes on easily, but then it registers against the lid when it closes. And that problem with that wood movement, it tends to limit the size of a threaded opening to, certainly I'd say 5 inches would probably be the outside limit where you'd start running into issues with wood movement.
All of these reasons are why I went to magnets in the first place. I couldn't get a gadget like this to work, and I can get magnets to work. So.
Well, I made a jig similar to this, and I can comment on the mounting the banjo. The one I did mounted in a banjo, I had a shaft into a wooden platform where, and I had a lot of flexing. So I made it mount on the bedways. Barry's mounted his on one of those box tool rests, which got a welded plate onto a rod, and that's much more stable. But
yeah,
I still haven't gotten mine working satisfactorily.
That is very stable. I can see that.
Well, let me just
Go
say,
ahead.
going back to the statement about that using the post, that it could rotate. I've turned aluminum. Doug, that fitting that I made you for your off-center turning, I turned aluminum, and it had no tendency to rotate the jig. You have to be mindful to tighten it down, I'll say absolutely tight, so it's not freely rotating on you. But once you have it at the right height and it's tightened down, along with the banjo being able to slide in and out, this device can also slide on the platform rest by, you can't see it here, but on the underside, there are 2 socket head cap screws that are in threads that tighten this box, that tighten this jig down to the platform rest.
It's in the pudding, Barry. Have you got a box you made with this?
I have one. I'm about to make one out in the shop. I ran out of time this morning. I knew that would come up.
Okay.
I do have 4 boxes that I made with the predecessor, which is where I discovered I had run out. It still works fine. It's just that your depth of thread on one side is perhaps 20 thousandths deeper, a visible amount deeper than on the other side.
But
and
they
it was,
still work. But
in
they
part
still
because
work.
I had a homemade shoulder
Yeah.
on the thread. But I'll state here that I do not believe if you use threaded rod, other than ground and hardened threaded rod, which I've priced, it's like $60 for a small piece. You cannot get a motion-free, a slop-free fit. It's going with ground hardened steel, round shaft, and ball bearings. And they are like 4-bit. Amazon only sells them in a 4-pack. So they're 4 for $9. The most expensive thing on the jig is that Penn State Industries threaded adapter on the left end there.
Yeah.
Hey, Barry, when you do your experiment, one of the things that I'd like to see how you do is how you align the grain, because that's always a tricky part too, because you have to take off such a very small amount if you have to rotate it, say, 20 degrees around to align the grain. 20 degrees is what, 1/18 of 16 threads per inch. So you don't take off very much at all to align it.
I've solved that problem by making primarily acorn boxes with contrasting wood.
Well, I'm very impressed with this, Barry. I can't wait to come over and see it in person and watch it work.
Well, I have it in person sitting here in front of the, let me stop share here. Okay, here's the jig. Now this
Hold it still. Okay.
This is the base that sits on, or this is the bottom of this body that sits on a base, and the slotted pieces, slotted areas you see here are to permit in and out travel to accommodate the thread depth. And there are locking handles that go on top to secure it in place. I don't know if I can hold it steady to show its lack of motion, but there is no, if I try and move this in or out, there is no, it has no motion at all.
No
There's
slop.
no free play. On this end over here, there is no in and out, and there's no free play. And it advances by rotating the knob. I actually don't use the knob. I hold my hand on the chuck and rotate the chuck, because I have had 2 occasions where I didn't think about it and I didn't have the chuck on really tight. And the chuck came loose and started to self-feed, and it screwed everything up. So this has a set screw on it, so this is not going to come undone. But any chuck you have on here, and I do keep a 1-inch 1-inch/8 Nova chuck around the house just for this, so I'm not putting 6 pounds of Vic 20 on the end here, or Vic 120.
Yeah. Well, that's a very, very fine rig. I want to see it in action now, and I want to see the results. That's the next thing up. So.
All right.
Thank you, Barry.
That's it.
Very interesting. I'm going to just very quickly here give Ron a minute. Ron, are you there? Where are you, Ron? Yeah. I'm going to show your picture, Ron.
Yeah, okay. If the fire alarm goes off, I'll mute myself. This is what I've been doing since 1st of February, about 2.5, 3 months working on. The chaplain over here they have services in this auditorium, and then they move over to the big auditorium once in a while. And they have to haul all this equipment across the driveway. So she asked me to make a podium and a table. So I made the podium and the table and the cross. I didn't make the book stand, but I made the other pieces. Podium is about 18 by 32, 3 feet tall, and I think the tabletop is 24 by 40.
I'm seeing
made out
nicely
of
turned
cherry
legs
and
on them.
stained and finished with water locks.
Nicely turned legs on there too.
Yeah, I turned the legs, left square ends on them to mount. And there are mortise and tenon joints and a stretcher between the legs at the bottom, just like at the top, run under the top. And then I put a molding around the outside to cover that up.
Nice work. Questions for Ron?
I just thought I'd show what I've been doing. I've done a little bit of turning recently, a couple of natural end bowls, but I got a couple pieces of cherry out of Massachusetts. It's the worst daggone cherry I've ever used. It's the end grain on that tears out so badly. I'm not able to tune it up to cut. I resharpened my tools and it still tears out. A lot of sanding and I get it kind of nice, but I really can't get it. I don't know what it is with this wood.
Is it hard? Does it seem extra hard or extra soft?
Yeah, it's cherry. It doesn't seem to be much different than any other, but turning it and finishing it is just a nightmare.
Was that kiln dried, did you say, or air dried?
It's a log out of off a tree.
Okay,
Just comes
air
down.
dried.
So it's
Okay.
holy wood.
Yeah, that's the stuff. Nice work, Ron. Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to go across the top of the screen with the guys who had their hands up. We got about 15 minutes here, so if you're a long-winded sort, I'll ask you to be a little short-winded. What do you got, Bert?
Okay, we got a real quick one here. I'll just share screen. Stu and I had to do a collaboration on a piece. We'd made one of these earlier. Can everybody see that?
Yeah, we got some black bars. Yeah, we saw this before. You showed us this another time.
No,
Or
this is the second one. This is the one that we made the first one for a friend of ours that passed away, and this one we done last week and just delivered it. Somebody else seen the other one and decided they just had to have one. So Stu and I, it took us, I think, 3 days to go from nothing to finished product. So anyway,
No,
that's all we got. We just
So that's a cremation urn, right?
That's correct. Yeah, the star drag is the actual filler spout. You unscrew that, and you have the opening. It's a little over 200 cubic inches volume. It's got like 700 yards of monofilament on it to get it the nice color.
Wow.
But nobody's using that as a reel to actually do anything with the string.
Oh yeah.
No, okay. I wasn't clear that this was an urn. Now I get
yeah,
it.
it's an urn. It's a cremation urn, and yeah, it's just and it looks really good. I mean, it's a collaboration. I made the barrel and the ends, and Stu did the base and the threading and the finicky work on the star drag. So it was a great collaboration. Took us, like say, 3 days to go from nothing to finished product.
Nice work.
John, it's the way of saying subliminally that it's a way of the good Lord reeling you in.
There you go.
There you go. Exactly.
Yeah, that's all I got.
Bruce, you're on.
What I have is oddly similar to Ron, only for a completely different purpose. I tend to try some flat sheet work occasionally too. And the first time I made a granddaughter a table, I made it with square legs like everyone makes for a kid, but I thought that was ridiculous as I'm a wood turner. So I should try something a little more involved. And oddly enough, though, I think I chose the same style legs that Ron did. It just makes me amazed there. So I had to remember how to glue up a table and built some gluing cauls to hold it flat. This is cherry as well. And then I decided to make loose tenon joints where I had already built a tenoning jig some time ago and dusted it off and tried to remember how to use a router. Excuse me. But then I made the first leg, which I think is extremely similar to Ron's style, where you have a square with a pommel, a single ring, and then if you notice, there's kind of a taper down here where the maximum size is probably about a third of the way down, and then it tapers all the way down as you go down the leg. And I decided it'd be easier to put the joints in before I turned it, so that was kind of how I did this. And I've acquired some of these. I call them Richard Finley fingers, which are great sizers that I've been using when I try and do multiples. And even though this is a pretty simple structure, it's a really quick way of getting the diameters right on every single leg pretty quickly. So you just dial these in and you turn until the fingers drop, and then you're set for the next size.
Huh.
Hey, Bruce, where did you get those?
I got them directly from Richard Finley in the UK.
Mm.
And I think the hardest part was finding the parts to put it into, because I believe the holes he has in these are metric, which was a little trickier on the rod. And then it was kind of a scavenger hunt to build the rest of it to hold on to the lathe. But the fingers work really well. I'll say they are a bit pricey, but they work really well.
And I guess they slide down, and then you have a set screw on each one to keep them in place.
Yeah, you can't quite see that. There is a set screw. You can move them to any spot, and then you set each one on the first piece that you make so that it's really easy.
Yeah.
It doesn't take more than a minute to set them up once you have the first piece.
So you're going into production work on turning spindles?
Never. But the times you want to make 2 and 4 and 6 are probably not that few, and it's a great thing, and I really like doing this. So here's the 4 legs. As I said, I think they're remarkably similar to the shape that Ron showed. So then I also dusted off the router and I put an edge on the table. And I remembered when I made the first one, I didn't remember to put a slot in the long sides of these. I don't know if you call it the stretcher, the runner. Maybe John will correct me on which side's what, but
Apron
there, so that I could fasten down the top to it in a way that still allows expansion of the table if you want. And there you go. That's my finished table. And as I said, I think it's remarkably like Ron's, except for the bottom.
It's very nice. Very nice.
Job.
Thank
Looks
you.
good.
Okay, I'm going to kill your share. Nice work. Don Smith, what do you got today?
Hello. Right, I've got 2 things. One for Bruce. That's the fingers that Bruce is on about. I thought I'd just show you what it looked like off the rod.
Yeah, mine has a different set screw, but otherwise it looks remarkably like it.
Yeah. Right. Just 2 things if I can get it, but this is something I've just made in the last 2 or 3 days.
Nice work. You guys are amazing.
This has been made up of 9 segments instead of usual 6 or 12 to give me a slight offcut on the half sphere.
Right.
So it's slightly not, it's not center, because if they'd been equal, of course, that would have been true. So it's gone slightly beyond the center, but that's a piece. The other thing, if I can quickly do a screen share, I'd like to just show you a table. Oh, I'm in the sunlight. There we are. Share screen. That didn't work.
Okay.
No, I'll come back next week on that one.
All right.
It was the club had a wood show, and we had a photograph of it, but it should have come up.
Oh, we'll bring it up another time next week.
Yeah, bring it up next week.
I'm trying to, yeah. Okay, Randy, you're on. What do you got, Randy?
Well, Santa Claus came yesterday in the afternoon and delivered something that I have been waiting for. And it's marked from Cindy Grosda. And what I haven't even opened it yet. It is the latest Stuart Batty platform. And
Okay. This is for sharpening.
Yes, it has a trunnion on it. I can open it. I don't have it mounted down at the bottom yet.
Yeah.
And this is how you adjust it. It is very well made. This thing is really heavy. I have one of the Wolverine platforms, but the problem is that it doesn't go around the wheel. So this one does.
And so what does that clamp onto? One of the square rods at the bottom? On the, where it
Yes,
shows
I have a Wolverine.
a Wolverine apparatus. Okay. Yeah.
And this has the bar here. This is the actual bar for it. So,
Okay. Very
Christmas
cool.
time. Yes.
Christmas time indeed. Show us pictures of that in use next time around. Yeah.
Okay.
Toby Booter, what do you got?
I got a couple of pieces I made recently. Share my screen here. This is a cherry burl. I believe I bleached it first and then dyed it. And the finial, I think, is maple that I spray painted black.
Nice.
That's about 7 inches by 7 inches, including the finial. Has interesting texture on the surface of the wood. Sort of burlish.
How much of a box is inside that? How much of an opening?
It's about 1.25 inches deep, and it goes about 1.25 inches back towards the edge.
Okay.
I couldn't go any farther because it dips down on this side here. I would have made a hole in it.
Nice.
And then the second piece is maple burl that I dyed blue. And this piece is about, let me look at it, 4 inches by 4 inches.
That's a beauty.
And I have a couple pictures before I dyed it here. And then I also have a couple pictures in situ there where it's came out of this piece of burl that I obtained. I didn't cut it this way. I wouldn't have cut a piece of wood this way, but this is what I started with. And that's where the piece was placed inside the wood. This is a cut mark here that I cut it out.
Oh. Yeah.
That's quite nice. Quite something. Questions for Toby?
I've since made another piece from this area over here also. It's still in the shop yet. I didn't finish it.
Okay.
Beautiful.
Good stuff. I've got a couple minutes left. I'm going to grab it myself. I got something I want to show you. I'm going to go over to this screen. I'm going to spotlight it, and I'm going to play this little video if I can get a cursor over here. I made the door in my own basement shop from rough sawn cypress I bought at Groff & Groff. It's about 1 1/8 thick and a little shorter than standard height to fit the opening. The joinery is traditional with mortises chopped on the drill press and bandsawn square tenons. The closing mechanism is a counterweight made from katalox. It weighs about 1 pound. Here's the drop pulley, and in the upper right you can see the door truck that runs in an aluminum track. Pulley block for the return inside the door frame. Turned handle also from katalox, and 2 inside knobs that hold the handle in place. And finally a skate wheel pulley that keeps the door from flapping in the breeze. All right, that's me. My problem with that is it has a bounce at the end. I got to figure out a way to damp the travel. And I've been working with magnets to try and catch the door and keep it from going boompa boompa, and just get it to stop neatly where it's supposed to stop. And I haven't got that worked out yet. But anyway, that's my current project.
Hey, John, I may have a suggestion. If you like magnets, try dropping magnets through a copper tube or something like that. If you can get the diameter of the magnet in the copper tube, you'd be amazed how it slows it down. It makes its own eddy currents, and it's technically converted into heat, but it could be used as a damper for sure. Just an idea. Go ahead. Thanks, guys.
Well, I remember that from electronic studies that's basically a hysteresis current, and you can get a swinging pendulum between two magnets and it'll grab it. And I've been trying to work something like that out, but I'm using magnets that repel. I don't know. I'll figure it out. Several things I've tried have not worked, but the door itself works pretty good. And I was also amazed to find, I saw, somebody on here, Bruce, with his router tenoning jig. Routers terrify me, so I don't use those. I got out my old hollow chisels and mounted them on the drill press and spent a lot of time fiddling with exactly adjusting. Got some very, very nice, accurate mortises out of it that way, and bandsawed the tenons. So that worked pretty good in my little shop anyway. Anybody else have any advice? That's a good idea, and I'm going to experiment with that. Anybody else got any other ideas for? So you got to transfer the momentum. At first, I thought I could catch the weight and slow it down, but that's not the problem. The door now has momentum, and momentum is always conserved. It has to go someplace. So it either turns into a bang against the frame, which will eventually knock the house apart, or the door, or it has to turn into heat, or somewhere that energy has to go away. So that's
how about just putting a little bit of foam on the closing side on the frame?
I haven't found the right density of foam. I tried that. It didn't do it. The foam I tried was weather strip foam. It doesn't have enough it didn't do it. But I might try some other consistencies of weather strip. I think that might be my simplest maneuver. So that's where I'm at with that.
John, to make a comment, I didn't say anything before, but the Mid-Atlantic Symposium is coming up, and I'm going to need some volunteer help moving equipment, setting up, tear down, and storing equipment back. So get in touch with me if you're interested, anybody, and I'll be sending out memos to all the people that volunteered in the past.
We saw an email go by from you about that earlier today, too, or yesterday. So,
hey, John, I don't know how they work, but those soft close drawer slides, I think that kind of mechanism is what you need there.
That could be true, and I've been trying to avoid going to that because I want to rig it out rather than rig it up rather than buy it. But I agree with you. A soft close drawer slide would do the job. I don't want to incorporate a door slide, and I'm not sure what's inside them. I guess I have to take one apart. I also bought a little what was sold to me as a cable damper for these purposes, but it didn't work. It would have replaced the weight, which I don't want to do. I like the weight. So.
How about tapered foam at the top?
That might do it. More experimenting at hand. Anyway, I wanted to show you my door. I thought it was a nice job. So, okay, we're right on the hour. I'm going to see you all next week. If anybody's got a burning desire to say something, now's your moment. See you all next week then.
See you next week.
John.
Have
a good one, John.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Bye. See you.
Wood shop. Thank God for wood.